Hello, my name is Jackathie, and I had a wild time playing Monster Hunter Wilds. I did happen to download and play the beta. I'm sure most of you guys did as well. But nevertheless, this is just a quick summary of what I think, what I'm hoping they implement, and, you know, the pros and cons, and overall, my first impression. So with that being said, let's get it. So, Monster Hunter Wilds is definitely everything you could expect. Everything. And nothing really groundbreakingly new. And for some that may bother people, you know, when the game doesn't implement too many innovations and maybe stays too safe. But on the other hand, if it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it. So, the game by any means is not like a revolution. Everything will be very much familiar and safe to the past title of Monster Hunter World. So if you are expecting some massive revolution, this won't be it. But then again, it doesn't have to be. It gives you everything Monster Hunter World provided, but more of it. Now keep in mind what I saw was just the beta, right? There is a lot more that this game is going to offer, and by that I mean, you know, from its environments, from its storytelling, from the monsters that you see, and the different ways you can use the environment to exploit them. So again, this was just a very small snippet of what the game had to offer, and it was already a blast. But they've done subtle changes, enough changes in the game that makes this a worthy, I guess, separate title. The world itself, they really narrowed down the feeling of having a connected world where you're not just in base and accepting expeditions and quests and then it loading, right, that monster hunt. Everything exists in that map. The monsters, the hunts, the ecosystem, everything just feels more like a world. And that is, I mean, that is a major improvement in of itself. The density and scale of monsters and the land was generally larger, right? It just felt more like a living, breathing world. It felt more realistic, and instead of, you know, maybe gamified. So there was that sense of, again, scale that I feel is a big improvement over its past titles. It felt less of a arcade and more of a almost their take at an MMO, so to speak. Now, I'm unsure whether these zones and different biomes will ultimately be completely connected in one seamlessly generated world. That has yet to be seen. But from the map itself, there was, you know, it was a very large open sand pit. You had tunnels, you had different monsters and creatures that fit the vicinity of that environment. You know, with the advent of having mounts, obviously they're going to probably expand on this philosophy of having a more open, connected world. Some of the issues I had with the world were that, so there were occasionally times where I would like try to go somewhere, but the boundaries would stop me, even though from my view, it looked like somewhere I should be able to go to. But that may be also a case of the beta, right? So I can't really make that determination at this point in time. There were 14 weapons, nothing that came out as, wow, like a complete, again, revolution. But I feel like they definitely changed the control of these weapons and the combos. But what I think they changed is that the actual skill ceiling has increased. It's not just as easy as, you know, holding a great hammer and then holding the right trigger and charging it up and blasting away. There seems to be a lot more varied, context-sensitive, timed combos. So I believe that the combat, on the surface, it may feel like there's not a lot of changes, but from playing and getting your hands on it, you can feel that the skill gap or the level skill ceiling has certainly increased, that it's going to take a lot longer to master these weapons. So there is that, you know, need to improve and really, you know, understand all the combos. And I at all did not even scratch the surface of this. Not only this, but they added the ability to switch weapons. So now you could actually equip 2 weapon types based on your scenario, and I feel that is a much welcomed approach in order to change builds, in order to just change the, your tools in the varied scenarios that the game presents itself. The monsters and the way they look have improved. The way they move have improved. When you like hit a weak point, you could really feel that impact. So they've just took what they already, had and made it better and dialed it up a little bit. And I feel like in that case, it's quite a success. They implemented a new focus mode. Now, this seems to be a lot more, better implemented, or just easierly, more fucking easierly. Is that a word? Easierly? It's easier to control it in a keyboard and mouse than I found on the controller, where it was just more difficult to aim. But nevertheless, I feel like, highlighting weakness points on the monster and then attacking that and then having an impact on the monster in terms of what it drops or how it moves, it is certainly going to improve the, overall combat and feel of the game. Overall, the character creation had a ton of options, right? From, all these types of sliders. I wish they had a little bit more customizations on the actual body type, building a thick, girthy, 2-handed wielding big dick hammer, body type versus just kind of that slender approach with the option of not showing muscles, right? Everything from the hair and the facial structure and all the clothes and the dyes, right? They certainly nailed here. So, I feel like that's definitely an improvement. A big improvement too, I feel, is like the overall story of the game. I felt like, it had almost a, maybe it was just the map and being in the desert, but it, and the sandworms, but it had this very much this like Dune inspired story where you're trying to find this hidden civilization called the Keepers, because they were wiped by some massive white wraith, as they call it. So you're like exploring new lands, finding out what this culture is, and I generally felt more engaged in the story. So that was really good. The tutorial was really great. Like right at the start of the game, you hop on a mount, and it was so cool to like have this chase sequence between all these sandwormy dicks trying to fucking suck you off, and you're just kind of like running away, and like you're pulling different rations and items from monsters in the air with your hook. So the whole dynamic of the mounting, and obviously that's going to just leave for a more wider open world. It's going to add the addition of using mounts in combat, which I think flowed well with some of the monster types. There was a ton of variety in the monsters that you fought, a lot of variety in terms of the locations they ran into. There was a ton of variety in using environment in order to, either incapacitate the monster in some way or to do big damage, like, pulling down a falling boulder, or just overall pillars, massive stone pillars that you could damage. So I feel like they're really trying to take advantage of the environment and things that you can use. There was a ton of items you could pick up and drop. There were similar gameplay mechanics, like you can use the mega bombs, or you could use all your pods, like the flash pod or the screeching pod or the dung pod, who doesn't like flinging shit at monsters. So that there was a very much more familiar use of the items you are familiar with, right? You're going around picking up honey. You're going around picking up, blueberries and whatever the fuck to craft items and use them and exploit enemy weaknesses. One really good thing about the open world is that it changed in its environment, right? You went from this sandy fucking dune-scaped area, then all of a sudden, in like a flash, literally, there was flashes of lightning everywhere, and that environmental factors could be used to harm monsters. So again, they just made a more cohesive world that's alive with an ecosystem, and there's a ton of more monster-on-monster interactions while you're fighting. There's more usage of the environment and the tools around to subdue it or exploit monsters. So, they took something that worked and just kind of upped it up a notch. And I feel like, you don't need to alter or be completely revolutionary, right? It doesn't have to be something so drastic to the point where, it is a Monster Hunter world. right, compared to his previous titles, when only the die-hard fans would know about the game, and it became less mainstream. So there wasn't that much of a, you know, diversion from their formula. So there is a lot of good in that you are going to get exactly what you expect. So by all means, again, if you feel like it should be a revolution, and you may be sorely disappointed in that aspect, but only if you set those expectations for yourself, because the game itself is fun to play. The combat is very deep and entrenching, even though on the surface it doesn't look like it. The monsters look amazing, right? The way they move and the way their hair moves, the way they're exposed. Now their weaknesses are exposed. The way every fight seems to have its own story, and the most importantly, again, the fact that the world seems less arcadey and loaded, and again more connected. So there's no question in my mind that the game is going to be a success, and it's going to deliver everything that a Monster Hunter fan would hope for. And that's it. I had a great time. There's nothing about it. It delivered exactly what it promised. Now, and in this day and age, how many developers really can say that now? So anyway, that's all I have to say about it. Jack-offs. I'll see you in the next one.